Good morning and welcome to Brighton Unitarians. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eleanor Chiari and I'm a regular visitor to this chapel. Thank you for braving the rain and the horrible weather to come here. We gather here with our bodies and hearts, each with our individual needs and longings. Some of us are physically present in this chapel, and I think it's about 30 people and my dog Muna. And some of us are joining online, they may be watching this now or perhaps at a later date. I welcome you all. Whether you're here for community, for rest, for inspiration, or in search of the sacred, you're welcome here today exactly as you are. And I hope this service may succeed in being just that, of service to you in some small way, whatever it is you're seeking this morning. So let's take a moment to arrive together. Let go of anything you don't need to be holding. Feel the soles of your feet firmly on the floor. You might want to spread your toes a bit. And imagine that a string is pulling you up from the fontanelle towards the ceiling. And let's spend a couple of moments focusing on our senses. We're going to do a 5-sense mindfulness exercise. So we'll begin with sight. So have a look around the chapel and notice 5 details. They can be 5 separate objects, or you might want to try 5 different, like 5 colors or 5 shapes. You might just want to look for triangles or circles. So try that, 5 things. And now let's focus on touch and do 4 objects. So you might want to feel for 4 different materials. So maybe your skin, perhaps a piece of clothing, maybe the chair, an object you might be holding, or just 4 different textures. And now let's focus on sound, and we'll go for 3 sounds. Try to notice different sounds. Seagulls. The vibration of my voice. Okay, now let's do smell. So notice 2 chapel. It might be any perfumes or materials on your fabric. You might want to smell the hymn book, or just people around you. If you want to be brave, some BO. Just smell. And let's end on taste. What do you taste in your mouth? And now, with the full awareness of your presence in this space, notice how your electricity in your body, your mood. Don't judge, let yourself be. And let's take a couple of slow, natural breaths. And we have arrived. So I invite Penny to light our chalice today, as Unitarian congregations do across the world. Super packed matches, classic. May the light of this chalice teach us how to be still and how to pay attention. May it remind us to search for the luminous in our days and how to best find our own light to share with the world however we are able. May it stand today for the light of knowledge and for all the teachers around the world who sometimes in extremely difficult circumstances, in refugee camps, shanty towns, and bomb shelters, dedicate their lives to their students. May they be safe from harm, and may their students remember their lessons. I come from a family of teachers, and this time of year feels particularly redolent with nostalgic feelings about the end of the school year, time passing, and many school years gone by. Looking back, I can visualize so many of my teachers, whose voices and bodies I studied and knew by heart. Some lessons are still imprinted in my mind, from long division to the phases of the moon. I had teachers who took us out in the forest and taught us how to weigh and register rare birds before setting them free. Teachers who wrote plays with a part for every student in the class. Some teachers made me feel alive. Others taught me fear and shame. But the best teachers were the ones who held knowledge like a shimmering thing dancing before us. And those were the teachers I not only loved, but wanted to be. When my middle school teacher told us how the warrior Siegfried dipped his body in the open flesh of the dragon he had just slain to become invisible, she and the class dissolved into the story. Our heads on our desk as beams of sunlight made specks of dust shimmer around the room. We did not dare move or make a sound, as if we were all resting on the scales of that enormous beast, breathing its last breath. Teaching at its best is storytelling, is encounter, is transformation. So much of world religion is, if you boil it down, a collection of lessons passed down through oral tradition, through text, and through practice. Some religions even recognize this explicitly. For example, in Judaism, the word for synagogue is shul, Yiddish for school. Today, I'd like to reflect on teaching as a spiritual practice and on the sacred role that teachers play in all our lives, in and outside the classroom. So the service will be divided into 3 parts. Part 1, teachers everywhere and the beginner's mind. Part 2, what you missed that day you were absent from 4th grade, thoughts on a poem by Brad Aaron Maudlin. And just to clarify, 4th grade is the American equivalent of year 4, so when kids are 8 or 9. And part 3, teachers in our pockets, in which I will lead you through a guided meditation taken from the Tibetan book of Living and Dying. If there's time, I'll also close with a poem by Khalil Gibran, but I realize I'm sort of stretching the limits here, so we'll see if we have time. It depends on how you meditate. But let's begin by singing our first hymn, 218, from the Purple Book, with heart and mind. So part one, teachers everywhere and the beginner's mind. So teachers are everywhere. Please, could you raise your hand if you have ever worked as a teacher? Okay, thank you. And if you have ever trained anyone as part of your work? Yes. Could you raise your hand if you've ever looked after children? Taught a musical instrument or yoga or dancing or any sort of physical craft? Yeah, great, thank you. So look at this. Yeah. It's worth pausing to think of the many different kinds of teachings that we experience in our lives. We learn from formal educators, from our parents or grandparents, storytellers and friends. I feel I have learned many useful lessons from people who really didn't like me, from bad boyfriends, and from my children when they were being most difficult. My dog Muna reminds me every day how to be present in my body and reconnects me deeply to the natural world. Unitarian ministers and my Buddhist and Hindu friends have taught me so much about embodied spiritual practice. And then there are the poets, the writers, many long dead, but whose words have shaped me in ways I can't even begin to describe. Joseph Campbell writes about the hero's journey and says that every hero gets the adventure they're ready for, but I think it's the same with teachers. We get the teachers we're ready for, and they come into our lives sometimes out of nowhere. So last week, I stumbled on the Hither Green Take a Book, Leave a Book box near Hither Green Station. I'm sure you have them in Brighton as well, these little magical mystery boxes. And I have had so many encounters, serendipitous teaching encounters with these boxes, and they often give me things right when I'm preparing for my sermons. And this time I found Richard Reed's If I Could Tell You Just One Thing, Encounters with Remarkable People and Their Most Valuable Advice. And it happened to offer me a little parable about education and the special alchemy between student and teacher. So I'm going to tell you what I found. It was sort of, not only did I find the book, but then I sort of randomly opened a page because I love that fortune cookie element of life. Anyway, so Richard Reed goes to the Dalai Lama, and he's been interviewing all these famous people and asking them, if you could give me just one word of advice, one piece of advice, what would it be? He's very excited about the Dalai Lama because he thinks he's going to be very wise. So he shows up, and the Dalai Lama sits across from him and smiles, and they have this really nice, comfortable exchange. And then Richard Reed asks the Dalai Lama for this answer. So tell me, what is this word of advice that you're going to give to the world? The Dalai Lama thinks about it, and then he says, oneness, one word. And Richard Reed is sitting there, but actually feeling deeply disappointed by this answer and really annoyed at the Dalai Lama, but he doesn't know how to ask him further, so he just sort of sits there squirming uncomfortably, silently. And then the Lama looks at him and sees that he wants more, so he says, well, if we could only recognize that human beings are all one with the universe and with each other, east needs west, north needs south, then we would really live in peace because religion wouldn't matter and nationality and borders wouldn't matter. And so Richard Reed is again very disappointed because he thought he'd get something better and deeper, and he's sort of annoyed. So he sort of says, well, how are we going to do that? And the Dalai Lama says, by education. And then he does something completely and totally unexpected. He goes right up to Richard Reed and whacks him in the forehead. And he goes, by education. And then they both just break into laughter. And the whole situation becomes ridiculous to them. And Richard Reed says that he feels that he's at one with the Dalai Lama and that they were really connected. And so I like this story. It also fits within a sort of tradition of Buddhist stories where the disciples are wanting something from their teacher and never quite get the answer they want. But anyway, in this story, the Dalai Lama is a great teacher. With his calm presence, he neutralizes the nervous energy that Richard Reed has, and he engages with him directly and in a warm and playful manner. He sees that he wants this answer, he offers the answer that the student wants, then he elaborates when this answer isn't getting there. And then in this striking him in the head, he reminds him that Richard Reed is writing this book and that educating the world is his task, and that's what he's going to be, how he's going to achieve this sense of oneness. Now, I'm not suggesting that corporal punishment is a sign of a good teacher, but in striking Richard Reed in this context, the Dalai Lama is waking him up, challenging him, reminding him of his mission, but also bringing him closer to himself while stressing that things don't have to be so serious. They chuckle together in a moment of connection that also emphasizes the very lesson the Dalai Lama was trying to impart, this lesson of oneness. Teaching is about openness, about erasing the space between teacher and pupil to make room for the lesson, which is not always comprehensible only through words. Sometimes the lesson is in a moment of laughter, in a sense of disappointment at an unanswered question. But for this story to be meaningful, we need to be open to the lesson that the Dalai Lama is trying to impart and to keep our cynical, all-knowing adult mind in check. Oneness is one of those words that can trigger an automatic eye roll. Our adult mind makes lots of assumptions and is constantly comparing knowledge and information that we think we already know. With this mindset, the words of the Dalai Lama seem like banal cliches, been there, done that, Coca-Cola commercial, boring. And yet, in this word, oneness is really a fundamental and profound part of Buddhism. What else should the Dalai Lama have offered for this just one piece of advice to the world book? It is really the essence of most Buddhist teaching. In Zen Buddhism, beginner's mind, or shoshin, is a very important concept that describes how we should encounter the world. It is about erasing all that we think we already know and starting fresh with openness and curiosity. With beginner's mind, the world offers itself up to us full of mystery and wonder. The word oneness recovers its capacity to encapsulate the dissolution of the ego and our mystical belonging to the universe. The people we encounter become puzzles. The places we inhabit are full of detail and color, and we're able to really change and learn, to be students again and again. So let's sing our second hymn, 66. How wonderful this world of thine. What You Missed When You Were Absent from Grade by Brad Aaron Maudlin. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling that you had forgotten to do something else, something important, and how to believe the house you wake in is your home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy, the one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost and one person add up to something. I was listening to this poem on a run in Hither Green Cemetery on a winter morning, and it stopped me in my tracks. It's a poem about what we don't learn in school, about the fundamental loneliness and loss that is inbuilt into adulthood, about the lessons we should know but are so difficult to learn. How do we make our everyday actions holy? How do we remember the voices of the people we have loved and lost? How do we believe fully that we have and are enough, that we belong, that I am is a complete sentence, that all our rushing around and being human adds up to something, and not just anything, something rich and meaningful? Would you like me to read the poem again? Yes. What You Missed When You Were Absent from 4th Grade. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling you had forgotten to do something else, something important, and how to believe the house you wake in is your home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy, the one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost and one person add up to something. In the poem, Mrs. Nelson has the answers. She draws diagrams, distributes worksheets, explains things, and her presence, even if imagined, offers comfort and reassurance. Even if the author missed these lessons, they were there to be taught. For me, being a Unitarian is about looking for Mrs. Nelson, and I realize this can sound a bit silly. Mrs. Nelson is not necessarily a person, but a series of practices, voices drawn from the ancient wisdom of all religions, ways of making sense of what it is to be a human alive on this planet at this vulnerable time. She may be an expression of my longing for the divine. As a lapsed Catholic, I resist any image of God as a human being or as anything involved or interested in our petty human lives. But how wonderful would it be to imagine God as a benevolent teacher, as one who knows our terrors and our heartbreak and knows just what we need to learn to deal with them. In 1952, The hymn writer, Catherine Galloway, did just that. So let's sing her hymn, One for One. She comes with mother's kindnesses, and we will be circulating the, what is it called? The offering gathering thing. Sorry. The writer Maya Angelou was asked how she managed to stand up and give big speeches in front of presidents and huge crowds. She had a simple answer. Oh, I put my teachers in my pocket. Maya Angelou could visualize specific teachers who had, at certain points in her life, believed in her and in her work. Their imaginary presence in her pocket helped her go on and do great and terrifying things. Good teachers offer a special quality of attention and care, which provides us with the oxygen to strengthen and kindle our own fires. Not everyone is so lucky as to have these people in their life, but when we do, and when we encounter them, their very existence is a source of comfort and transformation long after they are gone. So I invite you now to take a few minutes in silence to think about the people who have loved you into being and who might be the imaginary teachers you might put in your pocket. I will then guide you through a meditation adapted from the Tibetan Book of the Living and Dying. And I'm going to ask you then to choose one teacher, but don't let that decision ruin your whole process. So just let it flow, and whoever comes to mind, you're not betraying any other teachers if you're not thinking of them. You'll have time to do this on your own time. So just take a few minutes And think about as many people as you can who have loved you into being, and then choose one, and I'll guide you through that. So now close your eyes if you haven't already, and try to visualize a teacher in whatever way you may intend it. Someone who has, in their own way, loved you into being in a non-judgmental and supportive way. This teacher can be living or dead, and may even be a writer or someone whose life has inspired you, though better if they were a real teacher in your life. If you feel you do not have anyone to visualize, you may bring to your mind your younger self at a time when you experienced or overcame hardship. Now, imagine that your teacher is sitting right in front of you, almost like they're a mirror reflection of you. And take a moment or two to visualize their silhouette and their presence. If you wish to, you might even imagine them stretching their hands out to you. And now imagine a dazzling light, crystal white in color, emanating from your teacher's forehead and entering the center of your forehead, filling your whole body with light. Imagine that this light is filled with calming energy and with a sense of the protection and blessing of your teacher. And now imagine a ruby red light shining out of your teacher's throat, entering you through your throat and spreading through your entire body. Imagine that this light cleanses away any harmful speech you feel you've engaged in and fills you with the beauty of language. And now imagine a stream of shimmering blue light, the color of lapis lazuli, bursting from the heart of your teacher and reaching deep into your heart, filling your heart and your whole body with blue light. Imagine that this light brings peace, healing, and calm to your entire body. And now sit for a few moments in the still presence of your teacher without any image or ideation, just feeling the deep connection with and the blessing of your teacher. And when it feels comfortable, slowly and very gently open your eyes. The experience of being taught, of having a teacher see and honor us, is a privilege. According to a UN report from earlier this year, over 130 million women and girls worldwide are deprived of the right to education by early marriage, sexual violence, displacement, and war. Millions of boys also miss out on education because of poverty and war. In Afghanistan, since 2021, girls over 12 are forbidden from going to school. And this is probably the most draconian of all anti-education policies. In Gaza, the systematic destruction of schools and universities has been termed scholasticide. And it is only recently and only in richer countries that children with special education needs are beginning to get the adjustments they need to learn and thrive. So I would like to light a candle of concern right now for children and adults around the world who are left without teachers. And if you're willing, I would invite you to send some of the power of your earlier meditation, whether it's through your forehead, your throat, or your heart, into this candle as a representation of your sending out power for all these people who have no teachers. May they find teachers in the communities that surround them. May friends and family ignite their imaginations and fill their hearts with new ideas. And if they believe in God, may they feel her presence as an attentive and caring teacher, an illuminated guide to mind their lives. Amen. On Teaching by Khalil, and I'm going to keep the gender non-inclusive language for poetic purposes, but feel free to make mental adjustments as feels right to you. Then, said a teacher, speak to us of teaching. And he said, no man can reveal to you aught but that which already lies half asleep in the dawning of your knowledge. The teacher who walks in the shadow of the temple among his followers gives not of his wisdom, but rather of his faith and his lovingness. If he is indeed wise, he does not bid you enter the house of his wisdom, but rather leads you to the threshold of your own mind. The astronomer may speak to you of his understanding of space, but he cannot give you his understanding. The musician may sing to you of the rhythm which is in all space, but he cannot give you the ear which arrests the rhythm nor the voice that echoes it. And he who is versed in the science of numbers can tell of all the regions of weight and measure, but he cannot conduct you thither. But the vision of one man lends not its wings to another man. And even as each one of you stands alone in God's knowledge, so must each one of you be alone in his knowledge of God and in his understanding of the earth. All a teacher can do is guide and be present, to offer the knowledge and passion they have as a gift to be received. But it is up to us to be open to such lessons, to honor and remember them. To become better students, we have to stop thinking we already know everything and begin again. To be better teachers, we need to accompany those who need us with attentive presence and with our whole selves. What lessons are you still longing for? What can you offer the world from deep within your heart? Let's close with hymn number 10, Be That Guide. Go out into the world, a newborn babe, looking onto everything with beginner's eyes. Let the stones and the waves sing you their lessons, and be open to the people in your life, especially those you find difficult, as if you were meeting them for the first time. Allow yourself to be surprised and curious, and don't shy away from sharing your knowledge and experience whenever you can and to whomever, as only you may have the lesson they have been waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor, for thought and emotion-provoking service today. And thank you to Stuart for the music.